begin this speech by talking about our goal of net benefits, which was impartially conceded by the affirmative team. So we agree that net benefits are the goal in today's debate round. Now, where the problem comes in is whether it has to be significant benefits or just benefits whatsoever. So my first response under this is, if we look at the resolution, let's look at what it calls for. It says that the United States federal government should significantly reform its criminal justice system. It doesn't say it should have significant net benefits. It calls for a significant reform. And the affirmative team would argue that we are significantly reforming the criminal justice system. And also, what I'm going to be doing in this speech is showing you, even if significant net benefits was the standard, we meet that goal as well. So my first argument is talking about the issue of topicality. And I'm going to show you why this is really a non-issue in today's debate round. It's a non-issue for the first reason. The first reason is Mandate 1 was agreed upon that it is topical. What we see that under Mandate 1, tens of thousands of drug offenders are going to be going through drug courts. This is from Dr. Douglas Berman from the Ohio State University College of Law. They said that by some estimates, there are tens of thousands of nonviolent drug offenders currently serving a federal prison term that will be eligible for drug courts, end quote. So even if you disregard our second mandate, which we believe you shouldn't, it's still a significant reform because tens of thousands are going to be going through the federal system. So that alone is enough to vote for the affirmative team. My next point is showing you how our second mandate, in fact, is topical. And the negative team has ignored our responses of what a reform is and what an effect is. What we see under, and my 2 points under this: first, funding comes from the federal government. Second, the enforcement of the plan is the United States Department of Justice and the federal court system, not the state court system. The reform that's actually taking place, like the resolution calls for, it says that the United States federal government should significantly reform its criminal justice system. If you look at our mandates, the federal government is the one doing the reforming. Sure, the states are affected by it, and sure, theirs gets reforms as an effect of the affirmative team's plan, but it's not a direct systematic reform. It's reformed by the federal government and their state effects. You can't reform the federal system without affecting the state system. You're going to affect it in some way because they're so incredibly linked. But we have to look at where the reform actually takes place. So our second mandate should be flowed as topical because the federal government does the reforming and the states just get affected by it. It's not state policy. So that's my first two responses. Next, I would like to talk about the inherency argument by the negative team, showing you why this is a non-issue as well. And essentially their argument was that even if offenders were eligible, they would still be ejected. My first response is, this is what's happening in the status quo. People are ejected from drug courts because they don't have the capacity to get in. The affirmative team increases the capacity, so they're going to be getting into drug courts and they're not going to be ejected. The second point is they provided no warrants to this claim. They simply said, well, they aren't going to get in, they're going to eject it. But they never said why, and the evidence never specified. And I asked for specifics, but they never brought it up in their next speech. So that is a non-voter as well. And next, I would like to go over solvency points, showing you why the affirmative team actually solves the problem in the status quo. And the first is talking about the focus of drug courts. And the negative team's crux of this argument said we need to focus on different offenders. We need to focus on those who need the most treatment. But if you look at the card I read in my 1AC, which has gone unrefuted by the negative team, said that drug courts focus on high-value offenders and those who have the highest need of treatment. That's what the 1AC said, never refuted by the negative team. They simply said, oh, we need to focus it on different people. But they never addressed the card in the 1AC that said they do focus on high-value offenders that drain our system of resources. So that's the first point. It's a non-voter because we do focus on the right criminals. Next is the whole argument about people fail. And they've ignored the success rate. That's our main response. They've completely ignored the success rate of 70%. They simply focus on the 30% that fail. And they said, well, they're going to be fail, so it's not a good reform. But if you look at what the affirmative team does, and you look at the success rate of the program, which is 70%, it should be a float affirmative because we need to focus on the 70%, and we need to look at the benefits rather than the drawbacks of the 30%. If you look at net benefits, the advantages of that outweigh the drawbacks, 70% versus 30%. So next I would like to talk about their issue of longer sentences. And I have a few responses under this. The first one is the card never specified if they would be given longer sentences or if they would be given the sentences they would have originally deserved. And also, the card said may. It said they may be given longer sentences. So there really aren't any specifics given by the negative team. It's all hypothetical. And the next is that they provided no examples of where this has happened in the past. And finally, they are going to serve the regular sentences. And this is, and another turn on this argument is this is exactly what would have happened to them anyway. They're not going to prison for longer sentences. It's exactly what would have happened to them anyway. So instead of going to prison currently, they're going to go through rehabilitation programs. And if they fail, then they're just going to go back to prison like they would have anyway. Next is talking about the cost argument. The negative team has completely ignored the affirmative team's responses about the MADCE study, never addressed by the negative team. Cost flows affirmative on the issue of evidence. It also flows affirmative on the issue of recidivism because of evidence. What we have seen is we have seen quotes from the Government Accountability Office, the MADCE study, which is the most comprehensive study ever done on the program, versus negative advocates that have opinions. So if you look at it purely on evidence, it should flow affirmative. And finally, I don't have time to address the next points because I have 5 minutes to respond to 13. So my partner will pick them up in the next speech. But for all these reasons, I would strongly urge affirmative ballot in today's paper. Thank you.
How much prep time do we have left?
2 minutes and 10 seconds.
Okay. Yeah.